It was a gray, soaking wet afternoon in the sleepy mountain town of Pine Hollow. The clouds had been hanging low all day, and now the sky had opened, drenching the forested hills and muddy roads. For Elijah Hart, the rain was just another reminder of how quiet his life had become. A former paramedic and Army field medic, Elijah had traded years of service for solitude after the loss of his wife. He lived alone in a log cabin he built with his own hands, nestled deep in the woods, far from the noise and pain of the outside world. With his German shepherd, Ranger, as his only companion, Elijah had grown used to the silence, maybe even welcomed it. But on this day, something disrupted that silence. It began with Ranger barking, growling low at the door as if sensing something unusual. Elijah peered through the misted window and saw a figure stumbling through the rain. The man was wearing tattered clothing, soaked to the bone, his face streaked with mud and desperation. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days. Without hesitation, Elijah opened the door and called out, "Hey! You all right?" The man didn't respond, just collapsed in the muddy grass like his body had given out. Elijah rushed over, checking for injuries. No obvious wounds, just exhaustion, dehydration, and something else, something in his eyes. Fear. Deep, soul-level fear. Elijah carried the man inside and set him by the fire. He was unconscious, so Elijah started fluids and checked his vitals, old instincts kicking in. Ranger sat nearby, alert but calm, watching the stranger like he sensed something important was happening. Hours passed before the man finally stirred. His voice was hoarse when he whispered, "Thank you. I didn't think anyone would help me." Elijah asked him what had happened, but the man didn't answer right away. He just stared into the flames, his hands trembling. Later, as the storm raged outside, the man began to talk in fragments. His name was Marcus. He said he had been part of something, a program, he called it, but he didn't explain much. Just that he had escaped from somewhere very bad, and he was being hunted. Elijah, a man who had seen his fair share of trauma, knew that Marcus wasn't just some vagrant. His posture, the scars, the way his eyes flicked to exits, this man had military training. Elijah didn't press. He'd seen too many men shut down when pushed too hard. Instead, he made him food, gave him dry clothes, and let him rest. If the man wanted to talk, he would. But Elijah also knew trouble when he saw it. That night, he noticed something strange. Out in the woods, barely visible between the trees, he saw a flicker like the reflection from a scope or binoculars. Ranger growled again, low and unsettled. Elijah's instincts kicked in fast. He quietly locked the cabin, extinguished all visible lights, and grabbed the old rifle he kept more for nostalgia than anything else. He didn't know who was out there, but something told him Marcus had brought more than just a story. By morning, Marcus was awake and more alert. He thanked Elijah again, saying, "You don't know what you just did for me." Elijah asked him to explain, but Marcus looked out the window and simply said, "They'll be here soon." "Who?" Elijah asked. Marcus turned to him, his voice quiet. "The people I ran from. But maybe someone else too." Before Elijah could respond, Ranger barked again, not in fear this time, but alert, excited. Elijah stepped onto the porch and saw it, a line of military vehicles slowly approaching on the muddy trail. Not one or two dozens. Troop carriers, armored jeeps, men in full tactical gear. At least 200 soldiers. Elijah's heart raced. He turned back to Marcus, who stood now, shoulders squared as if preparing for something final. "What did you do?" Elijah asked, stunned. Marcus met his eyes. "I exposed something. Something they didn't want anyone to know. I didn't think I'd make it out alive. But because you helped me, now they know where I am. And I think they might be here to protect you, not harm you." Elijah couldn't make sense of it. "Protect me?" Marcus nodded. "Because I wasn't the only one watching you. They've been watching you too. And now, everything changes." The sight of 200 soldiers slowly emerging from the misty woods was something Elijah Hart would never forget. Their boots crunched the damp earth, faces unreadable beneath helmets and gear. It was like something out of a war zone, except this was Pine Hollow, a remote corner of the mountains where nothing ever happened. Elijah stepped forward slowly, hands visible, heart thundering in his chest. Ranger stood by his side, his body tense but unmoving, as if waiting for the order to protect. Behind Elijah, Marcus stood in the doorway, watching the scene unfold with a quiet calm that felt oddly rehearsed. He didn't look afraid anymore. He looked ready. A man stepped out from one of the armored vehicles, tall, broad-shouldered, gray at the temples, and wearing no rank insignia. He looked more like a leader from the shadows than a battlefield general. He walked straight to Elijah and extended a hand. "Mr. Hart, thank you for helping our man. My name is Commander Nathan Rourke. And I believe you've just placed yourself in the middle of something very, very important." Elijah didn't shake his hand. "You show up with half an army at my doorstep and I'm supposed to feel good about that?" Commander Rourke gave a tired smile. "Understandable. But we're not here to hurt you. Quite the opposite. You may have just saved Marcus's life and, by extension, a lot more lives than you can imagine." Marcus finally stepped out, still weary but stronger now. When he locked eyes with Rourke, something passed between them. Recognition. Relief. Maybe even respect. "You made it," Rourke said. Marcus nodded. "Barely. He found me." Elijah looked from one to the other, confused and irritated. "Someone tell me what the hell is going on." Rourke motioned to one of the soldiers, who handed Elijah a secure black folder. "What's inside is classified," Rourke said. "But you deserve to see it. Because this doesn't just affect Marcus. It affects you. And possibly, the country." Elijah opened the folder and scanned the contents. Photos. Maps. Technical readouts. Satellite images. And then, a picture of Marcus. Underneath it, Subject 7, Operation Emberfall. The more he read, the colder he felt. Marcus hadn't just escaped from somewhere. He had been part of a secret military testing program designed to enhance cognitive function, resilience under pressure, even moral decision-making in crisis environments. The program had started as a humanitarian training initiative, but it had been hijacked by a rogue defense contractor with darker motives. "They were turning soldiers into assets," Marcus said quietly. "Not heroes. Weapons. I found out what they were doing to the others. Some didn't survive the process. I got out, barely." Rourke continued. "And the people behind it are still out there. They lost Marcus, and now they know we've found him. Which means your cabin is no longer safe, Mr. Hart. You're a variable they didn't expect. And they'll want to erase that mistake." Elijah looked at Marcus, stunned. "You brought all of this here. To my home." Marcus didn't deny it. "I didn't mean to. But you helped me when no one else would. You didn't ask questions. You didn't call the cops. You just saw a man who needed help. And now, I won't let you face the consequences alone." Rourke stepped forward. "We can extract both of you right now. There's a secure facility 2 hours from here. We'll take you there, protect you. But we need your help. You know this land better than anyone. If they're coming, they'll try to flank us. Use the forest. Set traps." Elijah hesitated. This wasn't his fight. He'd left the battlefield for a reason. He'd buried too many friends. Lost too much. But something in his gut told him this was different. This wasn't war, this was justice. And maybe, redemption. He looked around at the soldiers setting up perimeter defenses, scanning trees with thermal drones. This wasn't paranoia. This was preparation. Whoever was chasing Marcus wasn't ordinary. And they were coming fast. Elijah sighed, rubbed his temples, and finally nodded. "Fine. But if we're doing this, we're doing it my way. I know every trail, ridge, and ravine in this forest. If they're coming, we won't wait for them to knock." Rourke smiled. That's exactly what we hoped you'd say. Over the next hours, Elijah transformed. The man who had once buried his grief in silence now barked orders like a man reborn. He marked weak points in the terrain, identified elevation zones for drone sweeps, and even set up remote traps with Ranger's help. Marcus worked alongside him, fitting back into a team like he'd never left. As the sun dipped behind the ridge, the forest grew quiet. Too quiet. Ranger's ears twitched. Marcus froze mid-step. And then Elijah heard it too, the unnatural crunch of boots on leaves. Not from their soldiers, from the East Trail. The one no one ever used unless they wanted to sneak in unnoticed. Elijah turned to Rourke. They're here. And this time, they weren't just after Marcus. The forest held its breath. A stillness settled in the air, thick and pressing, like the moment before lightning strikes. Elijah Hart crouched behind a moss-covered boulder, rifle in hand, scanning the eastern ridge. His heart thumped, not from fear, but focus. It had been years since he felt this alive. Beside him, Ranger was motionless, eyes-fixed, body coiled. Marcus was hidden in the underbrush, ready to move, and Commander Rourke gave hand signals to his troops stationed in the tree line. They were ready. But so was the enemy. Without warning, it began. Muffled cracks of suppressed gunfire erupted from the shadows. Drones monitoring the perimeter blinked offline, their signals jammed. One soldier dropped with a dart to the neck, non-lethal, but strategic. These weren't ordinary mercenaries. They were highly trained, surgically precise, moving through the woods like ghosts. They didn't shout, didn't fumble. They had a single mission: retrieve Marcus, eliminate witnesses. Elijah barked into the radio, east flank breached. They're using infrared dampeners, switch to heat pattern 3. His voice was calm, controlled. Ranger darted into the trees, circling wide, trained to flank intruders and alert silently. Elijah had taught him hand signals long ago, never thinking he'd need them again. But now, the dog was more than a companion. He was a soldier. Suddenly, a flashbang lit up the clearing, stunning 3 soldiers. Elijah leapt from cover, tackled one of the attackers, and disarmed him with fluid efficiency. They're not here to negotiate, he shouted, ducking as bullets thudded into a fallen log behind him. Marcus appeared beside him, firing 2 clean shots into the legs of another approaching mercenary. I recognize their patches, he said grimly. Omega Black. They were private enforcers inside the Emberfall facility. If they're here, this isn't just a cleanup. It's a cover-up. Commander Rourke's voice crackled in Elijah's earpiece. We've got movement on all flanks. They're trying to pin us down. Hart, fall back to the cabin. We're pulling Marcus out. No, Elijah interrupted. If you move him now, you're exposing everyone. We use the terrain. This is my home. Let me do what I know. Rourke paused for a beat, then replied, all right. You've got 5 minutes. Do what you need to do. Elijah turned to Marcus. Come on. We're going to give them the ending they don't expect. Within minutes, Elijah had rigged his property like a chessboard. Pressure traps under pine needles. Flash trip flares on tree trunks. Even a decoy heat source behind the woodshed that would mislead thermal sensors. As the mercenaries advanced, they were met with calculated resistance, blinding lights, snapping branches, bursts of noise and confusion. One after another, they fell into traps or were taken down by Rourke's soldiers, who now fought with surgical precision, their trust in Elijah's plan evident. But the enemy wasn't giving up. As the rain began again, the remaining attackers regrouped for one final push right toward the cabin. Elijah, Marcus, and Ranger took position inside. Elijah handed Marcus a backup sidearm. Last stand? Marcus asked, half joking. Elijah gave a dry smile. Let's just call it the line they won't cross. The attackers stormed the cabin perimeter. But the front door wasn't their entry point. One slipped through the rear, silent and fast. But Ranger was faster. He lunged from the shadows, sinking his teeth into the man's arm, pulling him down with brutal force. Marcus secured the intruder while Elijah fought two more on the porch, fending them off with the butt of his rifle and a well-placed elbow to the jaw. Just when it seemed the attackers might overwhelm them, a loud hum filled the air. Rotor blades. Above the trees, 3 unmarked helicopters hovered, spotlights blinding. A voice over a loudspeaker called out, "Omega Black, stand down. You are surrounded. Lay down your weapons." The mercenaries froze. Out of the tree line came another wave of troops, not from Rourke's unit, but federal forces in black and gray camo. Department of Defense insignias on their sleeves. A woman with short blonde hair and a commanding presence stepped forward. "This operation is under federal control. Commander Rourke, thank you for stalling them." Rourke nodded grimly. "Barely." She turned to Elijah. "Mr. Hart, we've been tracking Omega Black for over a year. But we never had the evidence to bring them down until Marcus escaped. And until you sheltered him." She held out a small flash drive. "Encrypted data. Taken from the facility. Proof of everything. Marcus made sure it reached us this morning." Elijah blinked. "You already had it?" She smiled faintly. "We had it. But without Marcus, and without you protecting him long enough to testify, it wouldn't have mattered. You changed the outcome." As the mercenaries were cuffed and loaded into vehicles, Marcus stepped beside Elijah. "You didn't have to help me. But you did." Elijah looked at the trees, the scorched earth, and the remnants of his peaceful life. "No. But maybe I needed to." He knelt beside Ranger, petting him gently. "We've still got it, huh boy?" The dog wagged his tail, bloodied but proud. The soldiers began to disperse, the forest slowly returning to its silent rhythm. But Elijah knew everything had changed. In helping one man, he hadn't just saved a life, he had exposed a secret buried deep in the country's shadows. And somehow, in the chaos, he had found purpose again. And in Pine Hollow, that meant everything.